Okay, so we're recording now. Henrietta, you're good to go.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. And welcome, Jeanne, and welcome
Hi.
to everyone out there.
Hi.
It's an honor to be doing this webinar tonight with Jeanne Denney in collaboration with the Open Center for the End of Life Nurse Coaching Program. And this is a free introductory webinar. And I'd just like to encourage everybody out there to participate tonight. This is for you to ask all questions from the heart, from the head, anything you want to know from Jeanne, and also to share where you're at currently in your careers, your nursing careers, what you're hoping from this, what you're looking for, any question you want to ask. So we'd really encourage that. Also, you can post your questions in the Q&A box, and I will moderate those for you if you don't want to come on mic and camera. So that's fine too. I'd also encourage all of you to chat through the chat box. That's a way that we can all kind of get to know, share information. And Jeremy and I will post any resources or links that Jeanne refers to that you think would be useful for you to follow up with after the webinar. So just kind of keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A box. It'll help us all to keep the conversation going. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Jeanne, and I'm going to give a quick introduction about Jeanne before she begins her presentation. And Jeanne will talk for 45 minutes to an hour, however long you want, Jeanne.
45-ish, whatever. We'll just have a conversation.
Yeah. And then we'll run the Q&A for as long as people need questions.
Great.
Okay, so a bit about Jeanne. So Jeanne Denney is the facilitator of the Art of Dying and a teacher in the program who has been very active in projects. Professionally, Jeanne is a somatic psychotherapist, hospice worker, and author of The Effects of Compassionate Presence on the Dying. She spent years at the bedside of non-communicative patients trying to learn their language. She works as an educator in many venues to help people turn fearlessly toward life, which includes death. Jeanne has also been offering alternative ideas about life derived from close observation of the body and energy through death, dying, and bereavement. Okay.
Wow.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Henrietta. I rarely get to have so much support in doing this kind of webinar and Zoom activity. So it's really nice to be doing this with other people. And of course, I would really love to be able to see those of you that are tuned in, and I hope you'll feel free to jump in again on the chat box and interrupt if you have a question or a comment. It's my preferred way of talking. But I have a few things I'd like to talk about tonight, and mainly to welcome you. I always find that whenever I've done educational projects with the word death in it, it's a lot for people to have gotten to the place that they would really sign up and be there, maybe even pay money. And I always congratulate people. In our culture in particular, it's often seen as a scary thing. And we are here to help evolve that perception and work together toward a different experience. So I'm here mainly to talk about the Integrative Thanatology program that's going on at the Open Center starting in October. There are quite a few projects the Open Center has going on around the art of dying. And it's very exciting that the Open Center has chosen to host such creative work for our culture. Most places would say these are big non-sale experiences that people don't want it, and yet deep down there's a great craving in our culture and in almost every person I meet for better understanding, more comfort with themselves, their body, their life. And we feel that some of these programs are really trying to address that. I think that the Open Center has been very committed to bringing dying out of the closet and into a great conversation for a lot of years in the Art of Dying conferences that have gone on. There's likely to be another one coming up in next year. It's being planned right now. But out of the last one, which I believe was the Art of Dying 5, don't quote me on that, it was decided that we would start this a program for people to really be together through a course of study and over a period of time. And so last year was our maiden voyage of the Integrative Thanatology certificate program. And we had very good intentions. We knew that there was a need that the program was responding to, and we knew that important things happened at the conferences, and we wanted to do more. But we really didn't know who would show up. We didn't know much about what would happen. And this year I'd like to report, having facilitated the last program and having taught in it, that we know a lot more about those two things. We also have some great faculty that will be returning and some new faculty to the program. We've added 30 hours to the certificate program, so it's a lot more bang for the buck, and we have a little more experience. But experience aside, we had a really great experience with last year's program. And I will be saying a lot more about that toward the end, and taking your questions, just practical things and what some of the students have said about the program. One of the most surprising things that happened after we initiated this, well, that we had a really good response. But nobody knew who was going to show up. I think we thought it would be mainly for professionals, because we're offering CEUs and ADEC hours, which is really helpful for nurses and social workers and body workers and so on, absolutely, and we will still do that. But I think we were all surprised at the diversity of the people that came to this program. We had unbelievable diversity. We had lawyers and artists and technology people, people who had kind of cottage industries and different parts of this work. We had morticians. We had ordinary folks who were working with a dying parent, or people who had experienced a loss and just had questions. We had death doulas. We had shaman. We had a long list of very varied people, all of whom were coming together because they almost uniformly said they had just felt called to it. And that is a hard calling to follow sometimes. So maybe some of you are here tonight because of that same feeling. And without exception, I think people were really gratified that they followed that calling, even though not everybody knew exactly what they were going to do with it. Yet they had developed a community of people, creative people who were had a commitment and a passion toward changing our understanding about death and dying in our culture, very much needed now, and helping other people that are suffering with this passage in whatever way they do it, even if it's just, and I say just lightly, but you know, being there, as we all will, on the train next to somebody who needs to talk, or with our neighbor. So this training has great power, and the power is not just for others. What we discovered more than anything is that it had a great power in each of the lives that it touched. Really curious why that is so, right? And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. So if anybody does want to say hello, of course, please just, I'll take a moment here as I'm pulling up my notes. Don't feel shy. If anybody of you know me, you can let me know that you're here. So I want to do a few things in the time that we're here together. I want to answer a few questions. I want to talk a little bit about what death education is and thanatology is, and why it matters to work with it, why now, why an integrative approach to thanatology might be important rather than an academic one, and help you understand the needs that this certificate is responding to. And finally, I hope that you can get some information on why you. And then there we'll need you to come in and maybe ask a few questions. But I'll try to offer you just some experience about what it's been like for me to walk this path, and many others that I have worked with in education. I will tell you a little bit more about my own journey with thanatology and the difference that it makes to take things on holistically, to the task of what we call end of life. I actually personally really don't like that expression, end of life, but it is what we use often. And it makes a difference to the people that are working around death and dying. Even if you're not sure that you're interested in this program at this time, I hope that you leave this conversation with something to take into your life, or a new question, maybe just one gem for the day. And I will certainly joyously await your questions. So let me go into a bit of the lecture portion of this. And why thanatology, and why do we need death education anyway? Why do we need that? 150 years ago, you would not have needed a death education course. How you would have learned about death was that you have surely been exposed to it many times by the time you were 20 years old, maybe even by the time you were 5 or 6. You might have been called upon to nurse the dying, or a sibling, or a parent. You might have had a parent, grandparent, or sibling laid out in your living room for a visitation of friends and family. You might have even helped to prepare his or her body, or to build a coffin. You would have certainly been to numerous funerals in churches where pastors would have spoken about the afterlife. At least in our culture, that's what you would. There are many cultures, many different ways of doing this, but there were probably some similarities in that there were rites of passage and exposures to the process. After death, your family might have had some rituals to acknowledge that a death had happened. There might have been changes in clothing, pictures, prayers, wreaths, and as a child, you may have posed next to the body of one of your dead siblings. This was a common practice in the 1800s for a family picture, a final family picture. It's hard for us to maybe imagine now. So I thought I would just show you a few pictures that I have put together. I don't know if I got my screen up here. Right, hold on one second, and let me see if I can find what I'm looking for. Here we go. All right. It's been kind of a rough week for me with technology for some reason, so I hope you'll be patient. Here we go. Oh, wrong slide. Yes. Hold on one second. Let's start over here. Okay, there we go. What I want is death education before 1900. Okay, and again, I don't have the right. Oh, we're going to do this backwards, looks like. Well, let me just see if I can run it backwards so we can do this forwards, and you're going to see some of the pictures quickly. Okay, there we go. Death education before 1900. There we go. Here's just a quick bedside political cartoon or newspaper cartoon showing going around next to a dying person, a man, a woman kneeling, praying perhaps, children playing with cats. And I'm kind of charmed by the ordinariness of this sketch. This is a more formal picture, but I don't think many of us have seen this kind of scene recently, probably because we don't have it too much in our culture. This is a picture of children posing next to a sibling who has died. Child death was so extremely common in the 1800s and early 1900s that it was such a common family experience, with the family participating. Here is probably out on the plains, the burial of a family member. Here are people digging graves. And of course there was this kind of general culture of mourning that, of course, that was kind of a high art in high society. Probably these pictures are from the northeast of America or England or something like that. But it was actually quite in vogue, death. There were ornaments and pictures and poetry and all kinds of art around this great experience. What I like to point out often is that while death was very much in the public eye sexuality was very suppressed in this particular culture we're looking at. And we live in a time that's almost exactly the opposite now. There were funeral processions and wreaths on doors. And again, I like to mention that one of the reasons I think that people were relatively more comfortable with the passage was that there was a great deal more contact with nature at that time than we have, or at least the tilling of soil, the harvesting of food. This was a common experience as well. And hunting, gardening, and farming all are part of a death education system that we don't have so much anymore. So now I thought we'd just kind of take a look at some of the pictures of our current culture to see why it is that we have death studies now and why they're needed. You know, I taught death and dying at Ramapo College for a couple of years and had some wonderful students that were in their 20s, and I was always kind of amazed at how they came in and the perceptions of what they thought this class was going to be about. And most of them thought it was simply going to be about trauma and gore. And here's why. Well, most people under 30 have been raised mainly with exposures to death through video and dramatized deaths such as these, let's say, just a random sampling, or completely unrealistic video game death, where to die is also to lose, game over. We've also, of course, had many hyper-realistic, dramatic, violent death and grief images since the 70s in our living rooms. We might get exposed to random accidents or acts of violence, possibly. That might happen. We might have some rubbernecking when we pass an accident. That might be an exposure we would have had. Notice that all of these, pretty much all of these, are violent deaths. And then, of course, we have our ICU experiences, our hospital experiences. We have machines. And then maybe no more contact with the body until we receive an urn or a box. And this is pretty much our contemporary education for personal death. Fortunately, we also have pets. And pets, I mean, as sad as it is to look at this little kitty, give us probably our best experience with actual natural death that we have, and people with things we love, you know, pets that we love, and burial and care of them, and home care of them. So they actually are wonderful educators. I also just wanted to, because I like to do a little history here, look at these graphs. If anyone's interested, you can see how much the demographic of people that have died has changed. Look here, you can look as far back as the 1541 here and see how many deaths there were before the age of 10, and how, see, I'm here's about it, and that has gone down and down and down, and you see how the curve in 1991, how we've been able to protect life much more into older years. Of course, we all know that, but if you think about what it was like for so many children to die in families, that gives you a sense of what's changed here, because we have been able to, over time, isolate people that are ill and elderly and put them more or less out of our sight. There's also been a change in what people have died from. Obviously, instead of flus and pneumonias and tuberculosis, we now have more cancers and heart disease as being the biggest, and they affect different age groups. Okay, so that's just some basic information. I think that's just really interesting. And by the way, this isn't information that's going to be in the certificate program. I just kind of like to help people become aware of this larger experience and why it is that we're existing and trying to do this now. So I want to kind of acknowledge some of the founders of this work and what started to happen around as death started becoming more and more out of our sight, as we began to have morticians, after we had embalming after the Civil War, death became a little different. And there became kind of a response to it. Interestingly, as the sexual revolution started to happen, death started to be pushed further and further out of public eye, And then the hospice movement kind of got its start as people like Cicely Saunders, who started to work with pain control, opened her first hospice in 1967, which wasn't really all that long ago. Just notice how it's tracking with the sexual revolution. I think it's just fascinating. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross published On Death and Dying, documenting that the care of the dying had gotten to be pretty strange. There was a lot of denial, and that there was pain around the fact that we were so denying death in our culture. In the mid-70s, Cicely Saunders and hospice came to the US. That was really the beginning of our hospice movement here. The Association of Death Educators and Counselors was formed in 1976, and that is the certifying body that certifies people that we are working with to provide certificates. And then in the 80s and into 1990, something else happened, and that was the AIDS crisis. AIDS changed something in our culture. It was a long-term chronic illness. It required a lot of care. It afflicted people that were very young. And once again, since it wasn't just the elderly and that were debilitated and pushed out of the way, they were people that were dying young that made us very aware of death and dying again. Stephen Levine wrote Who Dies, and some of his many other wonderful books that were used. The Buddhists came in. Hospice kind of went viral. And the Tibetan teachers, what brought ancient teachings to the United States, teachers like Ram Dass were teaching, and Joan Halifax popularized ideas about death and spirituality. So we began to approach it again as a spiritual subject for a certain population, I guess you'd say. Interesting that death and dying courses then began to be taught in universities during this period. It never had probably been necessary unless you were going to mortician school before that. So there have been all kinds of special programs for caregivers and initiatives like the Art of Dying conference that Ralph started about 20 some years ago. And of course we had the physicians assisted suicide and euthanasia legislations that have been widely discussed and passed in some states. And that has taken us up to about the year 2000. We're now in 2016, and I would say since then the movement in this work has been different, a little bit different. I think we're realizing that even as our culture has not gotten any less death phobic, that's for sure, but we have things like the home funeral movement, the green burial movement. We have things like death midwives, death doulas now, including the death doula program Henry Fursko Weiss runs through the Open Center. And all manner of alternative death initiatives that are springing up now, like seedlings in a field right now. It's quite an amazing time because so much consciousness is being raised about how much we need to understand this process, and that this process is not just for people that are dying. This process is something that's living inside of each one of us. So there's that, and then there's the future. If it's news to any of you, there is a care crisis in the future that is estimated to be very profound. We do not know that we will have caregivers to take care of all the people that will need care in the upcoming 20 or 30 years. I know friends that are working on that problem, but we're going to all be needed. We're going to need an understanding of what this passage is and how to meet it better than we're doing now. We will, the kind of care that is being offered currently in our systems is very much antagonistic to a dying process sometimes, and costly, and even sometimes increasing the pain and suffering. So we really need to move toward a more humane and innovative approach to the Great Passage. And that's a lot of what the Art of Dying Institute and the certificate in Integrative Thanatology, the different programs that we're initiating, working with aging, illness, and dying, the nurse, end-of-life nurse coaching program, all of these and all of the things to come are to empower people to get together, first of all, because gathering around this issue is extremely important, but get together and begin to imagine the next phase. Oops, I don't know that I want to do that just yet. Okay, so there are other really wonderful programs and trainings that have existed since the 80s and 90s. But many of them are Buddhist, and many of them are involved in one spiritual tradition or another. They have been housed in spiritual traditions, which are completely wonderful. But I think when Ralph White and I, Tom Valenti and others sat down to really think about why we might want to do this, it was partly because we felt that the conversation needed to move out of particular religious traditions and be a more, not secular, but more broadly holistic approach, bringing many different perspectives in. And I think that's what you will find represented in the Art of Dying curriculum. Just to give a list of some of the teachers, which I hope I'm not missing anybody, but I'm going to name a few. There is Leslie Blackhall, who has been a hospice palliative care provider and physician since the AIDS crisis, has been ongoing voice. She works at the University of Virginia Palliative Care, but she's from the medical establishment. She is very activist in helping our system to change. She will be starting the program in October, as well as with a little introduction from me. I am the facilitator of the program, as well as a teacher. The second weekend will be Henry Fursko Weiss's Death Doula weekend. And Henry came up with that term first. I think it was used in the New York Times article about him, and many people, of course, have taken it now further, but he has started a death doula association called INELDA, and he trains a lot of people to help people with the processing of their life and being with people, the idea that people might not die alone or might die with a great deal more support than they might otherwise have had. The third weekend is going to be kind of interesting. I will be teaching with Kat Kowalski from Johns Hopkins NICU. Kat has started a infant palliative care program, in the NICU to work with parents and infants. And I will be doing a day on death and human development and what it, just kind of looking at the body and growth and what death is part of it, just the natural part of our lifespan, and how we can see that and start to hold that. So we'll be working with those human development type of issues. In January, Simcha Raphael, a Jewish rabbi and also a professor and teacher, especially who's done a great deal of work on transpersonal work around death and dying, but also around grief and bereavement, will be teaching about grief. And Amy Cunningham, who is a Brooklyn mortician and home funeral guide, will be joining him on Sunday to talk about home funerals, I believe, or the choices that are available in burial. And then together they will be doing some things together around grief. So we're up to January. February, I'll be back teaching about presence, and I believe some compassionate presence and its effect on the non-communicative patients. And finally, we will have a music thanatologist, and Tony Bosis, I believe, will be there talking about the uses and adaptations of psilocybin studies. Tony is from NYU. He's a professor who has, as well as people at Johns Hopkins and Stanford, have studied what the use of psychedelics has been on people in existential distress. So we'll be studying about that, altered states of consciousness, really, in that weekend. And then finally, Frank Ostesky, who is a Zen hospice founder, will be out to do his wonderful work, talk about his work in our last weekend. That's a lot. That's a lot. The focus is on palliative care in our program because the dying are the ones that teach us most about everything. But the truth is, the amount of transformation that happens is quite astounding. And I think I knew that because I have taught death and dying quite a bit, and I've seen the kinds of empowerment, the kinds of life change that occur for people when they take up the challenge to really study something about this passage with other people. But even I was astounded to when I got the reviews from students, when I saw what they were doing with each other, when I saw the kind of expansion and excitement that they had, the passion that they grew into, the empowerment that they felt, was very moving, actually, last year. For, I think, most every one of the students that I know of. And I want to share with you a few of the things that the students said. This program reawakened enjoyment for life, for the day-to-day, a new awareness that mystically reintegrated a sense of wholeness to the experience of life that includes death. The ongoing contact has been invaluable to me. Contact plus exploration together, led by amazing teachers. Every module was hugely enriching, engaging, and rewarding. I gained a wider perspective from which to view the death process. I was taken out of my logical brain to the possibility of a different depth of experience. I am now, whoops, typo there, I am now part of a tightly bound group of like-minded people with a range of skills and experience who are as passionate about this field as I am. I was helped to understand the birth and death. Birth and death as one continuum of life. I gained a tribe. It completely changed my life. That one surprised me. I got confirmation that I was on the right path. So, though I think we expected it to be a professional program, and it was, because many people have taken professional steps in different directions from this, or deep into professional practice, nurses and all kinds of people, social workers. What I think we discovered is it was actually also a transformational program. And I don't suppose it has to be if what you want is really more information. And yet I don't think there's any way for us to study this human experience without being touched by it. And why would we want to? So I'm going to stop the share here for just a second and come back in. Can you see me? I don't know if I'm being seen here.
Yes, we can see you.
Great. Okay. Let me just check some notes here and see. So I want to say a little something else. I've got a few more minutes. I've said a lot of things that I had in my notes, but I want to say, why integrative thanatology? Why not just thanatology? Why don't we just learn about death? And statistically, there's lots of ways of discovering, talking about death. We can be learning, actuarial tables or statistics or about the physical processes. But we're doing something different. We're really trying to allow people to die as whole people, or allow ourselves to be present for people as whole people, or just allow ourselves to be whole people. I'm very fond of saying that death taught me everything about life, and I think that's really true. So the more I work with it in an integrated, wholesome, and supported way, the more alive I feel. And that's the paradox that we often have to take apart when we first get close to this. And people will say, why are you taking something like that? Why are you spending time and money on death? Just live, right? But in fact, we can't have a vital life without this aspect and without our initiation into it. And by the way, most cultures, indigenous cultures, understanding that people could not be truly adults until they had had some initiation into death or the afterlife. And so I think that that's what we're seeing in an offering program that's truly holistic and is a holding container for people's process to some extent, is that we are allowing people to be initiated into a deeper adulthood than they might have been previously. Integration really means bringing together things that are split. And I think that we see that there are a lot of things split about our dying processes. Life being split from death, for one thing. Professionals being split from patients. Professionals being the ones that appear never to die, whereas patients are the dying ones. Truth from distortion. Spiritual and psychological care from physical care. Mind from body. Death from our everyday awareness. Integration helps to make things whole, and it turns out to be a very effective approach. So that's the tone and the approach and the uniqueness of this particular program, in that we're introducing healing and wellness practices into the study of death that are usually experienced as separate, you know, such as going to get a massage or body work or psycho-spiritual care. We hope to be inviting people that do those things into an arena where they can deepen their practice too. So I'm going to see how I'm doing on time here. A few more minutes. So I'm thinking that I might tell you a little bit about my own journey with this and how this approach I've seen this approach be really helpful. I've been a hospice worker and a death and dying educator for about 15 years. I'm also a body psychotherapist, and I've done significant work with people on the boundary and in grief, in the middle of life and at the end of life. I've done some research on nonverbal communication with people who are near death. And in each role, I can see how important it is for people of any age, whether they're dying or not, to encounter the truths that death teaches. And it's the truth of our deeper nature, really, that we're challenged to see in these processes, and what it means to be wise. I happen to be, actually, I was an engineer for a long time before I started doing some healing work. I was kind of called to it. And sometime around 9/11 and just after, when my mother died, I got a very clear calling that I wanted to leave a technical field and start working with other kinds of gifts and training them and being of service. And it was interesting that the first place I arrived was really hospice. I was a hospice volunteer and raising kids, and I would put them to bed and go out at night and sit with patients in the nursing home, which often are very, very sterile and kind of sad places. But I found that because I was so deeply curious about what was happening to people in this passage, and because I had already gotten some kind of a esoteric construct or esoteric interest and deep curiosity, I didn't find these places depressing. I mean, of course, sometimes I found the experiences I had to witness upsetting, but I also found that I was very much more, enlivened by the experience. And so when people would say, wow, you do hospice work, isn't that depressing? I would, or how do you do that? Well, I thought that how do you do that was actually an interesting question, but isn't it depressing? I could never really understand. So the difference in that, I think, was the fact that I had spent some time already studying these processes and having a more integrated, holistic approach. I also saw when I started to volunteer that my first exposure with my first patient, I went to a team meeting in the hospice where I was. I was a new volunteer, so I knew nothing about team meeting then. And I looked around the room thinking everybody would be just alive with their experience, and found that there were many people who looked very burned out, honestly. And no longer, because they had, and I couldn't make sense of that. The difference between my experience and what I saw they were experiencing. I mean, there's great work done by hospice people, believe me, and I know now why they felt that way and looked that way. because I became a spiritual care coordinator later. But there was a real difference in how we were holding patients at that time. And like I say, later I became a spiritual care coordinator and had 50 to 60 patients on a part-time schedule, and families and staff coming in, and paperwork, lots and lots of computer data entry. And I got to see how difficult it is to keep from being burned out in that field, or in any medical field for that matter. So one of the things I became really passionate about is bringing people together to really do their own work while they're in the work, so that they can actually support each other, be enlivened. It's very important when we're on this passage, in this particular culture especially, that we have a group of colleagues, compatriots, friends, and people to be curious together to tell our stories with. So I would say that's the difference. The difference is that there's a challenge to be a whole person in the work, not just to do the work. And that challenge can make a big difference to our physical health, our psyches, our happiness. So I think I'm nearing about the end. The end of most everything I wanted to say, although hold on one second, I'm going to go back to screen share. I did have something to say about the program from Michael Pankow, who's the director of the Art of Dying. I want to say something for Michael about the certificate in Integrative Thanatology. Hold on. Okay. So the certificate we're offering this year, last year was 60 hours, this year we're adding 90 hours. So it's quite an amazing increase in what we're offering. The ADEC requirement is only 60 hours of training. We have 10 accomplished faculty members that I think I mentioned. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. There's personal growth. We provide these classroom hours, as I said, for ADEC, CEUs for professionals. One can take some of these courses on these weekends, or days on these weekends, a la carte. So if that's how you're interested in sticking your toe in the water, please do. If we have room, we totally welcome you. However, there are real advantages to taking the program together with other people and with a facilitator, because this really allows support and community that we need to work with this passage. We have deeper engagement. I love what Stephen Jenkinson says about a good death, and I'm probably going to misquote him. But Stephen Jenkinson says something like, a good death is a community-making event. And what I've seen over and over in death education is that when we do it together, when we learn together, I don't believe we're meant to learn it alone. When we do it together, communities form over and over again. And we don't feel so alone. Anyway, if you're interested, early bird tuition ends on September 30th, and it's $1,995 for the entire program. It provides support for to be inspired, to network, to investigate friendship, and so on. And that's about all I have to say. I hope to see you there. If this is right for you and you're feeling called, I hope you will trust that call. So, yeah, I'm back. And Henrietta, if anybody has got questions or you want to ask anything, please bring in some of our, yes.
But encouraging people to come on and talk to you about whatever they want to talk to you about, and or to write their questions in the Q&A box, chat box. We haven't got anyone coming in yet. I know they will. Probably just processing what you've said. That was great, Jeanne. Thank you so much. Really amazing. Yeah. Really good.
Yeah.
I like how you ended a good death community making event.
Well, Stephen is a very provocative human being, but he is very quotable, and he gets right to the chase, so I appreciate him for that. As a fellow teacher, yes, yes. Yeah, so I just hope, if you're out there listening, I'd really love to see you. I mean, you know, you can do, you surely have questions, or you can email me, I suppose, but I'd love the discussion. Don't be shy. There's only how many people are here, so.
I know, not, let's see how many, so there are 14 people out there, and so, yeah, I'm probably just processing what you said. I know I was taking notes myself, because you know, your own journey was very interesting to hear about. It's always, you know, it's always great to hear somebody's own process of coming to something like this. I was really taken by what you also said about, you know, the indigenous approach to death and sort of the change in our society. And there's a guy I like very much called Charles Eisenstein, who talks about how we're moving out of the age of separation, and I was kind of framing everything that you were talking about.
That is true. I mean, and I think it's really fascinating, why I certainly inspired to do this work. Loneliness in our culture is an epidemic in all age groups. I don't know, and we rarely talk about it. It's like this unseen, we all kind of feel it. We don't know why we're feeling it. And I find that fascinating, because there is something about death and grief that actually pull us together and help us understand our common experience, and help us pull together in intimacy. And so there have been these consequences of pushing death away that have had big societal impacts, I think. I don't have any studies to show that, but I find it true. So these are the kinds of things I keep getting fascinated by. Of course, the program itself is really kind of about palliative, it's more or less about palliative care and helping the dying, but these are big cultural issues and personal issues that we confront, you know, when we get involved with it. So there's a Barbara. Hi, Barbara. I'd like to ask a question in chat, even have Jeanne see my, okay, I'll do that. Okay, I don't know, you guys, can you have Barbara?
Well, Jeremy will enable your camera, Barbara, so you'll be able to come on, and then you just unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, Barbara. I'm about to bump you up to the panelist list. Just a second. Okay, so you should be a panelist now. We're not seeing your video feed, but... Oh, there you are. Great. Let me unmute you really quick.
With the iPad.
There you are. We can hear you now.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Jeannie. I'm so excited to meet you. I've been in touch with Michael twice this week. I'm coming in to meet him on the 28th. I am so excited about this. I can't tell you.
Oh, great.
I really
Isn't it ironic we can get excited, but it is exciting to come out. It's great.
I've been doing this work since '85. I have a high school diploma. I have 6 credits of medical terminology and transcription. I have a Delphi certificate for secretarial studies. I've worked in the medical field my entire life, all administrative assistant. Wow. I decided to, when I was living upstate, to volunteer for the people for the Southern Tier AIDS program. I was very interested after the Harvey Milk thing and the whole crisis started. So I started back in '85, '86 until there weren't services really for the people. It became very corporate, and I started the people, the Coalition for AIDS, People Living with AIDS Coalition, out of my household upstate. And from there, I have no degrees, no papers, no anything. It's just something I know that it's a gift that I have. I've worked with many, 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 many people who have passed. I have had 5 people pass in my family last year, and one being my mother and my uncle and my nephew. So it's been a hard year. But I have, I'm sorry, I thought the phone was my phone.
You know, I have a phone going off. I'm sorry, and I don't want to leave the screen to go turn it off. So maybe we can just tolerate that. No, I hope they don't leave a long personal message. But, you know, I think there are people that are really, I think anyone could do this work to some extent, you know, but there are people that are really called to take the next step. And I think that it's exactly that we wanted to make a program available for, is for people to take the next step with others, not just alone, like the way I started pretty much, but to really infuse each other with support and inspiration, and to let the journey unfold, because it will. And I have so much to say about this. I mean, I think the work itself is an empowerment, though we don't often think that if we do it correctly, and things will unfold. So I welcome you. If you're signed up, great. If you're not, do it.
No, I intend to sign up. My question for you is, yeah. I mean, I've worked in it for a long time, and I find the passage a real spiritual event for me. And I know what you mean when you say you get asked that question about, you know, I get it all the time. What I wanted to know was, is there a lot of technology things in this? I'm disabled, and I've been out of the workforce since '98, raised 2 children alone. I'm not really computer savvy. I have an iPad. That's why I asked Jeremy to help me get on tonight. So I'm wondering, is this like a thing where we're going to be taking tests and?
Oh, no.
Good.
No. You have to be present to get the hours. It's not, it has nothing to do with technology. It's interpersonal experience, discussion. There may be last year we did have an online forum to help people connect between modules and support each other, or share or discuss. I like to see people on there, and I don't like to give tests or papers, or there's nothing like that. But I would like for people to be involved in discussions if possible. So we're going to figure out a way for that to happen, probably on the Slack platform with a facilitator, or on their own, whatever. We'll figure that out. And yeah, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem.
Yeah, I was just concerned about that, and Michael assured me it's old school and hands-on, and that is my cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, why would it be
my cup of tea? Yeah. I'm so looking forward to meeting you.
Thank you. Looking forward to
meeting
you,
Jeanne.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Really good to hear from you.
Henrietta?
Yes.
Yes, what did you say?
Oh, no, I just said thank you, Barbara. It was really good to hear.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to talk. Thank you.
So I'm sure there are others of you out there that would like to, I don't know, maybe you're making a sandwich or something, but if you're here and you're present on the screen, I encourage you to just say hi, even if you're not going to sign up for the program, but just to share what has drawn you here tonight.
Yeah, that's a good question. What's drawn them here tonight? You know, I have to say it certainly got me interested.
Did? What was that?
It certainly got me interested in a much deeper way.
Yeah.
A presentation about, you know, going from before the 1900s and just through the last century, and sort of, it was very interesting how you talked about the interest in death, you know, the whole rites around death, the rituals around death, and then the sexual revolution and the sort of suppressing death.
Well, there's something fascinating in relationship between death and sexuality it's just, as a psychologist, I'm just really interested in that, and how to help people really have all ends of the spectrum. You know, so yeah. So we welcome you, Henrietta. Yeah.
Sorry?
I said we welcome you in the program if you want to come on over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and just all the comments from the people who took your last certificate in thanatology, just their comments, you know, about being a tribe and doing it together, and that it was life-changing. I mean, I can believe it. There's a reason.
I actually was a little stunned when I read some. I mean, and I didn't put all of the comments up, but there wasn't a lot of complaining. I mean, surely we have things to learn and things to do and things to adjust, but I think that just courage and the pride we feel in entering into this conversation is quite a reward, you know, as well as one thing I would like to say, if anybody's on the line right now, that is thinking of doing this, you can do this program without wanting to do active care. I mean, there are many, many reasons for doing this program. However, I would like to encourage those of you that are signing up or thinking of signing up to try to find your local hospice, a local hospice where you could volunteer and take their volunteer training as well. It will greatly enhance your experience to be doing that and getting some direct patient care while you are doing this course. It's not a requirement, but it is a strong recommendation. So if you have not been trained in that way, usually hospice training varies. It can be things like carrying groceries and shoveling snow, or it can be direct care at the bedside. Bedside care usually does have a training program associated with it. They vary, but let's just say it's about 20 hours maybe. I think if you could be involved in some way, I think you'll have it'll enrich your experience of the theory that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Yeah, sounds like that's a really good idea. I've got a question for you here, Jeanne,
Sure.
in the Q&A box, so I'm going to pass that on. It's from an anonymous viewer
Okay.
who asked, can you take some classes this year and continue next year? Would you still be eligible for the certificate?
Yes, people did that last year. They would come in for 1 or 2 classes. Maybe they missed one last year, or they're taking it this year. So I know Michael has worked with people in that. And what happened was, I mean, obviously I don't know how many weekends there are. Oh my gosh, I forgot an important faculty member. Peter Fenwick is going to be doing a webinar. Peter Fenwick's a well-known consciousness researcher from England. Anyway, that just interrupted myself. But, everybody misses something, probably, on most people. Some people didn't miss it all. But what I did at the end was just kept track of people that were there, gave people credit for the hours that they were present. And because obviously we have 90 hours of training, you can get 60 hours without being there for every one. Perhaps you can work toward your certificate by just taking the weekends a little at a time. And of course, there were people that did that, took 2 weekends out of the 6 or 7. And I believe that you can get credit for that for ADAC. You can get a certificate showing that you attended. So that adds all. You can just do it a little at a time if that's the way you would like to do it. I think it's a little more economical to do it in one program, and it also gives you the support of me, the facilitator, the other teachers, the other students, and the other classroom people. I also want to mention my good friend Noel Goldberg, who may be helping to facilitate. She is a longtime hospice volunteer coordinator. She was my trainer and a good friend, and so there will be additional support available, which makes a really big difference. We're really trying to create a holding net for this experience, so that it is not so frightening and it's actually enriching. So, yeah.
That's great. Thanks. It's flexible, fairly flexible.
Flexible, because not every weekend's interesting to people, or maybe they're just not at the point where they want to do X, Y, and Z, or maybe they've already taken Henry's death doula training or Frank's workshops, and they would like to sample something else, or are just not available for whatever reason. So definitely what I say at the beginning of every weekend is those of you who are just coming even for that day or that weekend are part of this process. And we welcome you. And it takes tremendous bravery to do even that. So we welcome you and hope to be a support.
Great, thanks, Jeanne. But like you say, it's Michael had said on the the course outline, this personal growth. It's really good to do these things together as a group, getting to know each other.
Especially death and dying.
I mean, it's yes, exactly.
And it's the model of care we're talking about too, because I think so often in healthcare situations, and even social work and clinical work. I know, of course, social workers know about this, but it doesn't always get practiced that people are truly supported in the work they're doing and for the kinds of things they're seeing. So we're really trying to model a different way of doing the work, which is you know.
Yeah, well, when you were talking about your start in this 15 years ago, and that sort of image of the hospital or hospice as a kind of rather bleak place, you know, that you know,
Well,
thank the Lord, has changed.
I don't know that it's changed for the better. I've got to be very honest with you. It's very spotty.
Really?
So,
right.
reality, hospices have become medicalized too. There is money to be made, and people have, you know, so there's different kinds of hospices out there. And I'm just frank. Nothing against hospice. I'm really a hospice advocate, believe me. But I think there is a hospice within hospice. There's almost a reason why this alternative, I want to say alternative, but integrative movement is starting, because in some ways the original hospice spirit sort of, you know, became bureaucratic a little bit. It still does wonderful work, but I think there's more we can add, or more we can add back to it. So I think that's a lot of.
And different environments, different approaches. That is what all of the different teachers talk about, I imagine. You know.
Yeah, definitely. There's home hospice. There's hospice in hospitals. There's hospice in specific structures called hospices. You know. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is another.
So we have a question. Yeah, which is from Beth. So Beth Hayward, hi Beth, out there. So I'll pass on the question to you. He asks, what is the difference between this program and the nurse doula one that is also offered? I'm a retired nurse, mostly in critical care, and feel called to this work, not the kind of death I've experienced in my career.
Well, I can't represent very well the end-of-life nurse coaching program, because I don't know it well. What I do know is Jeanne Booth, who's one of the people that are running it, and she's fabulous. One of the things I know about it is a lot more expensive. It probably has nurse coaching criteria that is more complex and involved. And I think that what you might need to discern by either talking to Michael or Jeanne is what it is you're really trying to accomplish and what you want to do. My understanding of nurse coaching, which I won't represent is the final answer, but my understanding it's really kind of like life coaching, but specifically for medical, going through medical processes with people. And this one is particularly for going through medical processes at end of life and helping people in many ways that I'm sure somebody with medical training can specifically help people do. And I'll be learning more about that program too, maybe sticking my head in there, you know, for part of it to teach. So I'll be learning with them, but I hope that you will contact them about that. This program is really more, I think it's not medically oriented per se. It may be very valuable for you to know about the medical system in order to help patients, or you know, but it will be more about these psychospiritual aspects of these processes and how to help people with them. Different approaches, different things we're learning, different theories about what this process is than what you would have learned. So I think what you might want to do is either reach out to Michael or me in some way by email, and maybe with a little more description about what you're imagining you'd really feel fulfilled by. We did have a nurse or two, I believe, in the program last year. It was wonderful to have them because they had so much experience, and they were going back really to understand more about the passage itself as a non-medical event. And sometimes it can be wonderful to learn from people that are non-medical people, you know, so, you know, but it would be wonderful to have you. I hope we get to see you there.
Actually, Jeanne, so you have a lot of people coming to this program of integrative thanatology that are non-nurse practitioners, that aren't nurse practitioners?
Oh, definitely. Mostly. This is not a program for nurses or social workers. No, but although we had nurses and social workers and spiritual care coordinators, for sure, that are in the work, and that was wonderful. But we had people They were just there because they felt the call and are discovering now what they're going to do with it. They're starting death cafes. They're starting programs in their communities for helping people get their advanced directives done, because they now see why it's so important, helping people, you know, be better prepared, be more, feel safer. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we need a large troop of people who are comfortable with these discussions and understanding and feel safe enough to lead others. Because people that are dying and dealing with death are everywhere.
Yes.
And there's an awful lot of fear out there, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, have you, in your experience, have you kind of formed groups to go to people's homes and things like that? You know, I mean, is there that sort of going on? You know.
You mean death cafe type thing?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean, like?
Yeah. Well, like.
Give me an example.
Yeah, but well, people who are dying, who have chosen to die at home, but you know, would like to be surrounded by not only family and friends, but just kind of community, and you know, just to sort of share in the experience. Like, have you?
No, I never have. No, I can't say that I have. Most of my work personally actually has been in nursing homes. Not all. I certainly, while I was doing spiritual care, I went to a lot of people's homes, hospitals, and so on. But the fact that I was raising family and had a limited schedule and saw clients meant that it was kind of easy for me to go at night. And this was a population that I feel is very underserved. I feel it's very neglected. And I got personally very interested in helping the people that are there. But there are lots of people doing innovative sacred crossings work. My friend Sarah Kerr out in British Columbia, for example, a death midwife who does a lot of ritual work, who does work before the death, who does work after the death with the family. You know, people are starting to expand and realize that, you know, if you want a different experience, you have to seek out people that can help you with that.
Yes.
There's a lot of pieces to it, and it's very easy to get unfortunately, if you don't actively or proactively prepare, you're likely to get a very typical scenario, and it will kind of like the birth situation where you start down a whole, you know, downward spiral of interventions and end up in situations you might not want to be in. Calling 911, perhaps, for example, when if you want to die at home, that's not the thing to do. I have a good friend, Judy Gottlieb, whose mother died. I probably shouldn't mention her name, but anyway, Judy is publicly doing this, so Judy, I hope you'll forgive me. But her mother died, I don't know, probably in May or something like that, June. And she was extraordinarily upset because her mother died peacefully at home, but they called 911, and 911 came, and they had the wrong kind of DNR. They had a DNR, but it was for a hospital, and it wasn't for home. So for whatever reason, the EMTs had to try to resuscitate her elderly mother for 45 minutes, during which the family was horrified. I mean, they were traumatized by the experience of watching that, rather than letting their mother have a peaceful death. 45 minutes is a very long time. So these kinds of things, I mean, you know, but they really happen if we aren't, you know, they really happen. And so Judy, bless her, is doing a public service announcement about this and trying to help people understand how to have a good death experience. We really have to be educated, truthfully. You really have to be. So you have to have your papers in order, but you also have to know something and be proactive for yourself. And it is very possible. So.
Yeah, it's very true what you're saying, and you definitely did sort of refer back to the you know, indigenous ways of approaching death and the rituals and the rites of passage through life, and you talked about the Tibetan Buddhist school of thought coming to America in the 60s with Ram Dass and Joan Halifax, and that obviously is sort of, you know, we're just really, you know, going back to these deeper truths that have gotten lost in our culture. So
I hope
you
so.
know, yeah, it's very important what you say. I was just going to say, well, we've still got time and nobody's asking at the moment, but your work around the nonverbal communication at the bedside, is that something that you will talk a lot about in the training?
Yeah, I will. I spoke about that in the conference last year in 2014. I did a day on that in the past certificate program, and I will do another day in February, I think, just on that work, what my experience was working with nonverbal states, which I was just kind of attracted to. I did actually a pilot project in which I was measuring the heart rate variability of both patients and sitters to see what kind of interaction they had, did they know they were there, and so on. And it confirmed what most spiritual teachers have said, is they not only know we're there, they really know we're there, right? So we have to be pretty careful about what we're doing in some of these situations, and have to learn something about how to interact, with people. So I'll be doing that, and I usually take people into an experience of laying on the floor and going into a state like that if they want to. Don't let that scare you off. You can always opt to have another role, but I think it's a good experience to try to at least touch some of the consciousness states that we might get into at some point. Practice, as Plato said, practice.
Yeah. So it's a deep training, really.
Yeah.
Which you can participate in or not if you're a little wary, but sounds like most people do dive in from your experience. If they're taking the course,
yes, I think everybody took it on their own level. I mean, it's a very different experience if you have a great deal of grief and it's very active, but you're looking for a supportive community for yourself versus, I'm a 30 years critical care nurse or a hospice nurse, and I want to come out of my medical lens a little bit and see this world differently. I mean, but the mix of it is what is so exciting. The mix of it all, For me, if you want the mix, this would be it. Not the nursing program, because that's all nurses have the same training. But if you want the mix of just, it's a great place to be. This program's a great place to be. So.
Yeah, and also all the people that you've mentioned, all the faculty of teachers, I mean, just sound really fantastic.
Yeah, we have a good group.
Yeah, another a mix.
Yes.
And actually, for everybody out there, we'll look forward to send you by email all the people listening, everybody's bios of the teachers, just to make sure that you've got them to hand.
And you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to be traveling for the next few weeks, and doing some presentations other places. So I may not get back to you immediately, but I will respond to your questions. So especially before the 30th, if you want to get in for the early bird and sign up, just write to me or Michael Penkow, or I would probably be the right person to reach out to answer your questions or get you to the right people. So please come. Yeah, well, I don't know that we have any more questions out there. So we'll wait around for a little bit and see.
Yeah, let's wait around for a little bit, because you never know. That it might come something. My internet for some reason is a little unstable, so if for some reason I suddenly go, Jeremy, will you leap on and pass along any questions? It's going very.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just standing by.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
You're very clear microphone. Actually, Jeremy, anything strike you about this course that Jeanne's been talking about?
There's a lot there. I mean, I might be a little curious to hear a little bit more of the nonverbal communication. Just out of curiosity, recently, my own grandmother actually passed away, and she had an in-home hospice care, not at my home, but in her daughter's home, which is my aunt in Pennsylvania. And she was, for the most part, in a nonverbal state the week that we were visiting and spending time with her. And I guess that was the question. Does she understand? There are times where I knew she did, and there are other times where I wasn't sure. So I don't know. I found it to be a fascinating thing, and of course, everything you're saying about kind of encountering death, it really has a kind of impact on you, especially as me. I'm 29 years old, so I'm thinking, here I am in sort of the culmination of someone's life, and like, what would I be thinking? Like, how do I prepare for that?
Yeah.
So, a learning experience, but in general, I'm curious to hear a little bit about the nonverbal.
You mean what was likely going on for her? I mean, what I would say is that most all of us will pass through that state. Most all of us. I mean, not everybody. There's sudden death and all kinds of things. But for generally, and just what I think they call metabolic coma, it's basically when we just start to our body starts to shut down. There'll be a period of at least several days where we won't be very responsive. And yet sometimes people do wake up in that state and say something very clear or surprisingly sit upright. This shocks families, but it's just a natural process. This period is, I think, quite sacred. In some traditions, priests would chant by the bedside or say prayers and meditation is very helpful. The person is likely, in my experience, in a very fine consciousness state, very sensitive, and not necessarily able to respond in their normal way, but that doesn't mean that they're not present in some way. They're very expanded in some ways and preparing. So being around loved ones could be wonderful. Being in the room itself is probably huge for people. You don't have to shake them or grab them or get them to open their eyes or talk, people. And it's very delicate, and it can have a very big effect on people. So I think the one thing I would want people to know that might be listening is that to treat them as if they're there, not as if they're just the object in the room and everybody else is having a party and talking about them. I mean, that is probably a bit of a violation. So we want to be sensitive to the sensitivity and the presence that person may be in.
Thank you. It looks like we do have a few more questions.
Okay.
Yeah, you go ahead, Jeremy. We've got a couple that just came in. So.
Okay. So Zelda is saying they'd like to say hi.
Oh, okay.
Zelda, let me see if I can get you on camera here. 1 second. I'm going to promote you to panelist to see if you get microphone and video. Okay, we see you, Zelda. Great. Let me unmute you real quick. Okay, there you are.
I can't see her, but I see you, Jeremy.
Zelda there? I can.
I see me.
Good.
Hi, Zelda.
Hi.
Thanks for being so courageous.
I just want to say hi and thank you. I don't even know what I want to say, but I just thought, I was like,
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Webinars are lonely experiences largely, and I like to exist in a field of communication.
I'm not sure why I want to do this. I don't have any medical experience, but that's what I want to do, and I'll be there.
Well, you'll be in a demographic very much like you, because that's often what people say. I don't understand why I'm doing it, but here I am.
I know.
So good.
I want to tell you that and say hi.
Good. I'll look forward to seeing you, really. Really. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And if you have any questions, I'm here, but, will you be coming from the New York area or from afar?
Are you still talking to me? I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in the New York area.
Okay, great. Good.
Manhattan.
Okay, good. A local.
I'm alone.
Great.
Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Zelda.
There was one more question there too, and this is from Art, and I wonder if Art could just give me a little guidance here. He has a question about the students having to assist every weekend, and I'm not quite sure I understand. But the students don't have to assist at all. So I'm not really, if it's be present, I'm trying to understand the question. So if Art's on there and could jump on, that would be great. Or could elaborate just a little bit.
Yeah, let me try to get Art on here. Hi, Art. I'm about to add you to the panelist list as well. Your microphone and your video cam should pop up. Okay, I see video. Hi, Art. We're going to try to unmute you real quick. Let's see. Are you there, Art?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello.
Hello, good night. First of all, Jenny, thank you for your introduction to the program. Really, you pulled me, although I have experience, but nevertheless, it's good to listen to other voices concerning the trend line. My question is because, according to my understanding, when I read the information on the internet, there are classes Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm trying to make my schedule to be on class, but I have a busy schedule on Sunday.
You have to work on Sunday, did you say?
Sorry?
You have to work on some Sundays?
Well, I have to. I am part of the church.
I see. Yeah.
Right now, they give me 4 appointments for this year, and so I will be very busy. And one of the appointments that they want me to do is to develop the pastoral care at the church. So I'm making my schedule to be in class on Saturday or Friday. So I don't know if that.
Well, there aren't a lot of Friday program. I mean, there's a Friday evening the first weekend.
Okay.
There may be another Friday evening in February. I actually, just going from my memory, I don't know that there are all that many Friday evenings. So there's just the first one, which would be great if you could be there. Sunday is kind of important. If you needed, you would miss a good portion. You did 50% or so. If you could never come on a Sunday or come late, you could come late. I think you might have to look at which days what would be the best way for you to take the course. If you're going to miss every Sunday, I would talk to Michael and see should you just sign up for the Saturdays individually, for example. Or maybe you could come in the afternoon.
I saw that on Saturday they have classes on Saturday.
Yes.
So I
yes.
could come on Saturday for me better.
Yeah.
Although I could come in sometime during Sunday, but I would have to make the schedule intentionally make it for that.
Yeah, you'd have to take a look and see what you could arrange. It's about once a month, while this is going on, from October to March. So
once a month?
About once a month, yeah.
On Sunday, one Sunday at.
You would be one Sunday a month that you would be affected.
So.
And I would love to see you. We, for whatever reason, women tend to take this course more than men, so male presences are very welcome in this training. Everyone is welcome, but it's nice to have that presence.
Okay, thank you very much.
What was your other question?
No, that's my only question. It's scheduled for me.
Yeah. Okay, great, Art.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks, Art. Okay, I think. Let's see if there's any other questions. Not seeing anything else in the Q&A box.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who was brave enough to hop on and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few. So there's about 7. There's 7 people out there, but that's fine. We've had a good few questions sort of fleshed out the course and the shape of it and what you bring to it and who's participated and kind of all the different aspects.
Yes, and also we could probably certainly put you in touch with some students from last year, if that would be good for people to have that perspective. So there are many enthusiastic supporters, and I'm very generous in their time. We hope to be forming some other initiatives out of these programs. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you both, Henrietta, and thank you both, Jeremy, and everybody that tuned in. It was a kind of fun.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much. It's really, really interesting. In integrative thanatology, really a new, a new area, and I'll be interested to see actually what you just said. Where the new avenues you're pursuing from it. Yeah.
Well, we'll see, right? It's going to be a co-creation, so.
Experimental. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to sign out then if there are no other questions, and I wish everybody the best and hope to see you this fall.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Everybody, you'll be receiving the recording. We'll be sending that out to everyone. Thank you for participating.
Okay, bye.
Everybody out there, it was great. And thank you, Jeanne, very, very much.